99% of you watching this video will never become a Fortnite pro, and that is just a pure fact based on statistics. But if you don't become a pro, there's something that caused that failure, and we're going to find out what it is before it happens to you. I have 6 reasons or mistakes that you might make, and some of these are very preventable. If you can avoid these, you can increase your chance of being the next Bugha or Tayson from way less than 1% to 5%, 10%, or even more. We will start with the old favourite of failing to learn from your mistakes. It applies to almost everything in life, and it definitely applies to your Fortnite improvement. You all know it, but I challenge you right now to think about whether you actually do it enough and whether you do it the right way. The first step is to find your mistakes. How often do you actually go into your VODs and find out why you died in a box fight, or why you got scuffed going into endgame and couldn't make it through to the second moving zone? Despite most people's reflex response, the reason is usually not because the player that killed you is the worst player ever and did something stupid. Either you made a mistake or they made a good play and you didn't know how to counter it. Maybe your mistake wasn't even at that moment, it might have been when you failed to rotate several minutes earlier. If you aren't putting in the work to study like this, you are likely to fall way behind everyone who does. But even if you do that, do you go into VODs of games where you clutched up a fight and had a great result at the end? Or games where your duo died but you somehow won the game? Probably not. Go on and learn from those moments too. And once you've found your mistakes, I recommend writing things down in a note-taking app or in a Discord server. It might feel old-fashioned, but noting down the mistake and how you will fix it either in creative or anywhere else is a really valuable habit. Revisit them later that day and the next day and even the next week, and make sure you have corrected it. Every game, unless you literally played it perfectly and had the easiest win of your life, provides opportunities to fix a mistake. Although talking about perfect games, you can learn so much from those too. And this leads us onto the second thing that will stop you from becoming a pro, which is not learning from success. Why do Cammy and Zeti get top 10 almost every single game in the hardest lobbies in the world? How do Queasy and Vino get height in half the top lobbies that they play? There's the cliche basic answers like, well, they're always uncon and Zeti just starts perfectly on mid-ground so it's easy to be consistent. Or Vino is the best fragger so they just get a refresh and have the mats to take height. But these are horrific oversimplifications and quite frankly insulting to how much goes into their strategy. Find some of the best duos in the world, focusing on ones that play your style. Maybe one of them uses your drop spot, or one of them plays ultimate low ground just like you. Watch their games and write down everything that is keeping them alive. What's their off-spawn strategy like? How do they rotate and position themselves in mid-game? And what enabled them to find that refresh in the endgame? But don't fully focus on pro games. You can also look at yourself and what worked for you. This is particularly valuable because these are the standards of lobbies you will probably be playing in the future. Do you even know why certain things work for you? Or do you just do them again and again just because they work? Does a certain rotation always give you good positioning? Does a particular endgame layer keep you safe and give you refreshes? And why? Do you truly know why the things that work for you actually work? I'm posing a lot of questions here, but I'm trying to challenge and teach you to think for yourself, because there are hundreds of things you could be doing right or wrong in the thousands of situations that Fortnite puts you in, and I can't even address 10% of them in a 10-minute video. Those first 2 points covered why you should figure out what to improve at. These next ones are what you actually do about it. So this mistake is the mistake of not training effectively. There's this phrase that goes around a lot, I'm grinding. What does that actually mean? For some people it means they get home from school, play lightning cups on 3 regions, then 4 different cash cups followed by 5 hours of scrims, and then dream about the multiple times that they full box someone that day. Now this is undoubtedly a grind, but not a useful or sustainable one. Playing tournaments is good for putting everything together, and they are the big target in the end, and scrims are good also for some endgame practice. But where are you actually going to improve everything else? Your aim, your mechanics, your piece control, your game strategy, and where is the time to actually study and reflect on all the things we talked about previously? This misguided grind is a bit like a professional footballer playing real matches all day and then having a 5-a-side game in the evening afterwards. Now this is not how professionals improve. They work on all sorts of very specific skills throughout the day, punctuated by downtime like strategy lessons and relaxation time. Then things come together in short practice matches and they only produce the final product in the weekly games. In Fortnite, this equates to spending plenty of time in creative throughout the week, and not just zone wars and realistic free-for-alls. You should also be using aim training maps and piece control drills, depending on what you need to improve at. Very focused practice. It also means spending time actually thinking and planning. You need to know your off-spawn, which I have a whole video on, and then you'll also want to plan some rotations and talk to your duo about your synergy, endgame playstyle, and anything else. Practice smarter, not harder. Related to this is our next point, which is where you simply don't put enough time into Fortnite. To succeed, you will need to put a lot of time into the game. If you can only put in 2 hours a day, you will probably never become a pro. For some of you, there is no way you can do more than that due to education, parents, or other commitments, and that's just an unfortunate situation that many players are in. Talking of education, do not drop out of school for Fortnite. It's just an awful life decision, unless you're on the verge of becoming a tier 1 player and you're around, let's say, 16 years old with your first set of qualifications done. Education sets you up for life, and failing to do it leaves you with very few options for later. How about parents though? Can you get around the parents thing? Well, firstly, I encourage you to respect your parents, of course. I'm not saying they're always right, but falling out with them will only make life worse for you. But if you are improving a lot and already getting some earnings, then you might be able to persuade them to give you some leeway. If you're in that situation, I would encourage you to reach out to cope.gg, who can help you and your parents to understand the viability and seriousness of esports these days. Remember that they grew up in an era when multiplayer gaming meant that you went to your friend's house to play split screen on a 15-inch TV. But be realistic, because if you're placing top 5k in cash cups, you can't expect your parents to ever believe you're about to make millions as a pro. While I'd love to see all of you be the best player you can be, just be careful about the cliche of pursuing your dreams when you're young, because your teenage years are a time when you can really mess up the rest of your life by not getting an education. Okay, let's move on from the lectures about parenting and school, and let's say you know what you need to improve on, you know how to do it, and you have the time to do it. What could go wrong? Well, a bad friend group is certainly one of the things. This group is responsible for more than you realise, and it's often where most of your continuing motivation comes from. Motivation usually comes from wanting to prove yourself to others. If Fortnite wasn't multiplayer, nobody would be anywhere near the level that they are now, because if nobody else in the world cares, it's unlikely that you will care to improve either. It might all sound quite egocentric, but that's human nature. You want to improve so that you feel a little bit of sense of superiority over others. Your friend group should also have some people who are ideally of a somewhat similar mindset, also interested in improving a lot. They should be people who you love to see succeed and who love to see you succeed, so that you can celebrate each other's achievements. Healthy competition is good, so try and beat each other, but at the end of the day, it should all be GG's and well done for trying if someone lost. If you have no good friend group, you probably feel a bit lonely and lost. You're likely to lose motivation, especially if you can't find a suitable teammate to play with. That's why a bad friend group is one of the most likely reasons you will fail to become a pro. But in terms of finding a good one, it's not easy. Maybe someone who you duo with might bring you into their group one day, or maybe you can find a niche community that you share something with other than Fortnite. Our last reason today for why you might not become a Fortnite pro is the one that you literally can't do anything about, and it is that you might not have any natural talent. There is often a debate about how much of gaming ability is genetics and how much is practice, so here's my take on it. If you have bad gaming genetics, you can generally still become a very good player. If that is you, and you do everything 100% correctly to improve, then you can still be better than someone with god genetics who does everything at 80% effort. But their skill ceiling is higher, so if they do everything 100% right, they will simply be better than you, and there is nothing you can do to catch up with them. But what do I mean by bad genetics? We've already covered things like not being able to learn properly or not having enough motivation, and those can all be linked back to genetics somewhat as well. But here I'm talking more about things like brain processing speed, finger coordination, and hand-eye coordination. All these might seem like slightly confusing terms, and honestly I'm no scientific expert on them, but from my experience in gaming and other similar hobbies that require mechanical and mental speed, I have seen massive differences in the natural skill that different people have for these things, and also how fast they can improve them and the final ability that they can actually reach. Some of you will have got the unlucky genes, and some the lucky ones. So if you think you avoided every other reason I mentioned in the video, then just blame your ancestors. So tell me down below whether you're going to be a pro one day. Otherwise, thanks for your support, and don't forget that many aspiring players have Kinch Premium to help them on their journey to success. So don't make the final mistake of not finding out more about it in the links below. See you next time.